What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and I am joined by Degenerate Jay. And in this video, we're going to talk about Spider-Man 4. A few days ago, depending on when this video goes up or when you guys see it, I had talked about The Amazing Spider-Man 3, the possibilities. We talked a lot about the rumors of Andrew coming back. Well, in those rumors, there was stuff about Tobey as well. Now, to me, and I said this in that video, and I'll say it here, Spider-Man 4, I think, is like infinitely less of a, possibility of happening than even an Amazing Spider-Man 3, which seems more and more possible based off of what you can see off of Twitter. I want to talk about, maybe is it possible, how it would work, and I brought Jay, somebody who I believe is, number one, way more of a fan of this Tobey Maguire trilogy than I am, and also someone who I just think knows way more about it than I could ever know. So, Jay, thank you, firstly, so much for being here to talk about this with me.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
Let me quickly say this now, just so we get the majority of people. Jay is an incredible content creator. He's already done, even when I'm recording this, some Spider-Man stuff on his channel. So make sure you guys go subscribe there. The link for his channels are going to be in the description below. But, an amazing guy, someone whose editing quality is about 30 times better than me. So go check him out. And Jay, I'll just hand it over to you first. So really, kind of a two-parter, right? Like, will it happen? Should it? Maybe even more. Will it happen? Should it happen? Do you think it's possible? What do you think?
Well, first off, Alex, I want to say that I need to recoup this compliment and say I think you're a more handsome man than me, and I love going to your channel for news every day. So
thank you.
I just need to get that out there. But with Spider-Man 4, when it comes down to this, if you're asking me, do I think it will happen? I'm going to be a little negative here on this one point. No, and I hope that I'm wrong. Now, the reason that I don't think it'll happen is Sam Raimi is a busy man, busy to the point where even though they're doing another Evil Dead, which is his, industry baby, Evil Dead is the thing that put Sam Raimi on the map and also created his career in a lot of ways. He's not even directing that. He's not directing the new Evil Dead. He's just kind of producing / helping on it, and somebody else is directing that movie. It seems like people like him and Bruce Campbell have kind of gone on to their own projects in a lot of ways, and they'll kind of swerve back into other projects, when they're needed, but he's a busy man. So first off, one of my issues with this happening is that one of the conditions of the crew coming back to Spider-Man 4 was if there was no Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire, and Kirsten Dunst, and some of these artists just did not have an interest in coming back. They had said back during Spider-Man 3 that was the reason that these movies worked, was Sam, was his involvement and how passionate he was. And yes, of course, out of all of the people who wrote things into these movies, right? Obviously, they're the director. They're not the only writer, but they make a lot of creative decisions. Out of all of these people who directed Spider-Man movies, Sam Raimi might be the one who understands the comics the least in terms of the specifics. But I think that he might be the one who understands the comics and the source material the best in terms of concepts. And what I mean by that is his stories are amazing in terms of covering the responsibility or the struggles of being Spider-Man or the personal grief that character goes through. Those conceptual level things connect so well with fans of the Spider-Man comics character because of how they cover them. They don't connect with fans of the Spider-Man comic character because their portrayal of the Green Goblin is 100% comic accurate, or because they created the best and most comic accurate Venom, or because they were able to make a Sandman who was exactly like the comics. That was never the goal of Sam Raimi, but the goal of Sam Raimi was the heart and soul of those characters translating to the screen. And I think that generally one of the reasons why the Tobey Maguire trilogy is beloved by people other than just when it came out and ushering in the age of superhero movies, just like X-Men did, I think one of the reasons this is so beloved is because it's able to translate that heart and soul of these characters onto the screen, even when it misses the marks on specifics. No one goes after the webbed suit because it has silver webbing that's raised. By the way, that was done for camera shots and stuff at the time. But nobody talks about it because of that. They just talk about it's a cool suit. They talk about the heart and soul of this stuff. And if you can't get Sam back, which he's busy right now with obviously Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and all of his other stuff, and he's an aging director too, I think you're going to have a hard time getting these characters back. And I know that they threw money at Tobey. I believe the report is that both Tobey and Andrew made something upwards of $1 million for their inclusion in No Way Home, despite it not being that massive of screen time. But I know you can throw money at Tobey and maybe he will come back, but at least the prevailing attitude of most of that cast back in the day was, we need Sam to make this. So I think that the big question of if they can get Sam, and I kind of wonder if they can. It might be possible now with getting him in, Doctor Strange, but maybe he has other stuff planned, and you have to see where that would go.
No, I totally agree. I think he's probably like the center piece to it, the center key that, if you don't have him, you're probably not going to be able to do it. For me, he's definitely like a big part of it. I would say like time and confusion, and I guess I'll explain that just in case, right? I do think the audience generally is like pretty, well, I would say the hardcore audience is very smart, like very, very smart. But one thing that I've kind of been vocal on is I don't like giving the general audience as much credit as I think people have done it on Twitter, where you talk about, Andrew coming back and maybe he's the mentor for Miles, and that's how you can get Miles into Tom's, like if you wanted to do that. You can have Venom be for Andrew. I think that stuff is generally okay and possible. I think if you start, and granted, like Tobey's would be probably the most distant from the rest, so I will give that credit, right? Like if you were to do all of that stuff I just said with Andrew, that would actually maybe be the most confusing part to a general audience of like, okay, how do these universes work with each other? Like, what am I watching? Like, and again, I'm not saying the hardcore. I'm talking about, the mom and pop, like my parents, my 60-year-old parents who, watch these movies like one time. They don't really know too much, like them, okay? Granted, the Tobey one would be so distant that maybe it would work, but you would most likely, because if you do a Spider-Man 4, I think you have the Amazing Spider-Man 3. Like, I don't think you just do Tobey's 4 and not give Andrew anything. So now you got 3 Spider-Men. Again, maybe you have Miles in it. You got Venom in more than one, like, place, right? So now, like, it does get a little, like, where you're tossing multiple, you're trying to juggle multiple things at once, right? So that, to me, like, I don't know how, like, I guess I would put value on that, and I would almost put it as much as getting Raimi back. But I don't know. Maybe that's just Jay. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that the multiverse, to quote Doctor Strange, it is a concept about which we know dangerously little, especially when it comes to the 60-year-old parents. That's the issue that I have with this concept is if you are making it for you and me, of course we understand. All right, there might be some questions, like for example, Logan. And I think it's still kind of a question because I don't know what Mangold and Hugh Jackman really intended at this point, because Logan came out, right? And the question was, okay, is this after Days of Future Past? Oh, yes, it is. Okay. But wait, no, it's a different timeline. Okay, how does that work? Because it's the same actor. There's going to be questions with things like that, even with people like us. But I think that the separation of actors makes it a lot easier for us, right? So, oh, this is an Andrew movie. This is in Andrew's world. Obviously, he didn't get yanked somewhere else. He didn't overshadow Tom. He's not the new MCU Spider-Man. They didn't, recast Tom, right? So that. But the problem is that, say I was going to show these movies to my mom, and you can say, well, yeah, it's hard, right, Alex? It's hard to talk about because I know that one of the general audience perceptions is, well, if you can't understand the movies, if you can't be smart enough to understand them, why are you watching them? And I get that that's a perception, but the problem is those people's money accounts for as much as you and me, right?
Yeah.
A $10 ticket, well, I should probably say like $13 ticket from my mom or Alex's dad or, a grandpa who goes with his grandson, that money is just as valid as yours or mine. And so they do need to take into account audience understanding when they make these things. And I think that, if you have 3 Spider-Man universes going at a time, that is a bit much. That's a bit confusing. I don't think it's confusing to me. And it's something I've always thought that these comics properties should do more of. I think What If, the What If show from Marvel, despite what people may or may not think about it, some love it, some hate it. I think it's got some really good episodes and some mediocrity, but that kind of shows the potential of this multiverse, of a universe where anything's possible. And maybe in one universe, maybe in one universe you have Captain America jumps in front of the bullet and blocks it with his shield that would have hit JFK, and all of a sudden everything goes differently. Maybe in one universe Andrew's still Spider-Man, things go differently. I think that you have a lot of possibilities to tell stories in that way, as long as you make it abundantly clear that they are differentiated continuities. And I think that as long as you do that, I don't think it's a problem. It's something like Spider-Verse or even No Way Home. I really think they've proven that these things work. And I think that these movies have in some ways moved beyond the people who don't understand them. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but what I mean is that I think they know that, mom or dad or grandma or grandpa will still go to see it with their kid, but if they don't understand why Tobey's there, that's not there for them, that's there for the kid, right? Or that's there for you or me. And I kind of wonder if that's not even as much of a concern to them, because it seems that these stories have gotten fundamentally more complicated since I would say, since Guardians of the Galaxy, where they introduced the outer space and interplanetary stuff, but especially since Endgame, where we're now getting into time travel in different ways, and then the multiverse and multiversal concepts with Loki and all this stuff. The expectation with Marvel is that you're caught up, and if you're not caught up, that's on you. That seems to be their expectation. So I'm not even sure if audience understanding would stop them or not. It's really hard for me to tell.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I go back and forth, right? It's like, is it something that they care about? Probably, but then is it also like, is it that hard to get over if you're watching it? I don't know, because I'm not like, I have questions with the ending of No Way Home, in terms of, okay, everybody forgets he's Peter, so Harry Osborn's not dead. There's no way, unless it's a different universe, because then Norman goes back and he doesn't die, so which would stop Harry going down. So like but that's some, I don't know, like nerdy, is that like a wrong term to use? Those are like questions that people that I guess are in the know like us, those are questions we would ask. I don't even think they're things my parents would even think. They probably would say, who is he? And I would say James Franco, and they would remember that. You know what I mean? Like, these are not even things that pop up on certain people's radar. And it's tough. It's tough to distinguish, I think, between it. But, I'm not the biggest fan of Tobey's trilogy. I've said that. It's a minority opinion, and I'm okay with it. But I definitely respect them more now than I ever did. I like 3 more now than I ever did. And I totally would be down for 4. It's got to happen soon, though. Like, this is not something we were talking off screen, Jay, about Tom. Maybe you take 3-4 years before the next one. Like, I would imagine the Tobey one's got to be. I mean, he's pushing 50. Sam Raimi's over 60, right? So I would say you have to move relatively fast. So is there anything last minute comments that you want to throw in there?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that with Tobey pushing 50, I would assume that from what we saw of his Spider-Man in No Way Home, I would say he's probably, what do you think, Alex? I'm going to ask you, between 40 and 45?
Yeah, they always go young. Yeah, I mean, he's 47 in real life, something around there, and they always pretend they're a little bit younger. So probably like those early, like 43, somewhere in that range.
And so with that, to me, I'm not saying that this is the most accurate thing ever, but especially with Spider-Man's regenerative abilities and his ability to move around and be very, very healing and flexible and strong, I think you could have this Spider-Man. I'm not saying we're going to see it on screen, but I think you could essentially guess that this guy could be Spider-Man till he's about 60. I think at around that age, that probably sounds insane to you, Alex, or to anyone out there, but if you think about it, you have wrestlers like Goldberg who are out here at like 55, almost pushing 60, who are still throwing people around, right? So if you assume that this guy has super strength, super durability, healing, athleticism, all this, I could see him doing that until around there. Maybe he starts to slow down a little bit, get hurt a little easier, and maybe he stops, right? So you have room to work with that, but I don't know if anyone's interested in watching 59-year-old Spider-Man. I just don't know if that's a thing. I know that the Dark Knight Returns as a concept worked for like another story for Batman to come back when he's old, kick some butt, finish up his storyline in a way and move on. And that's the kind of thing that I think you need to see out of Tobey if they do it. I think you would need to essentially just give him one more movie, maybe an appearance in something else like Secret Wars or something, right? And or Multiverse of Madness or whatever. But I don't think he's someone that you could make 4, 5, and 6 with, like the original concept was to give him an R trilogy. I think that ship has sailed. I think that if you're gonna bring him back, it's got to be for one final strong movie. I don't think you necessarily need to kill him. You could always have it end with someone like May Parker being born, like his daughter in some of the continuities, who becomes Spider-Girl, and you could actually always do something with that. You know, do another Raimi movie in that universe if you thought it would sell with a character like that. But I just think that it's something where if they're gonna do it, they need to do it in the next couple of years. I even though I can buy it with all of this guy's superpowers and what we know about the comics, I don't know how many people would be invested in, accepting of, or interested in 59-year-old Spider-Man. So that's kind of where I think you have to draw the line and get that concept out there if you're going to do it. Otherwise, the clock's ticking.
Definitely. Yep. I see it as like a one and done, but kind of just, giving. I mean, it would do so well. Money wise, I don't even think it would honestly be an issue. It's just more about logistics of it working. So let us know, guys, what you think in the comments below. As I said in the beginning of the video, make sure you guys are subscribed to Jay's channel as well. An amazing guy, an amazing creator. I know he's doing kind of like series of Spider-Man reviews, which are excellent. So make sure you guys check that out. Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I always love talking about Spider-Man. I love this trilogy. Like I said, I pleasantly went back through and I enjoyed every single Spider-Man movie. I can be the one guy, not that it makes me special, but I can be the one guy who says I loved the Tobey movies. I really, really enjoyed the Andrew movies, and I really like Tom Holland as Spider-Man too. So I'm kind of all over the place with this character, but I really appreciate being here and talking about it.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you all on the next video.